and welcome back to CEO.CA's Inside the Boardroom. My name is James Petham, and today I'm joined by Tim Coughlin, President and CEO of Royal Road Minerals. Tim, it's great to see you today.
Great to see you, James. Thanks for having me.
So I wonder if we could start off with a bit of an overview of Royal Road. Could you give us some of the history of the company and what's your mission today?
History of the company. So Royal Road started its life, or at least its public life, in 2015 when we listed in the Toronto Stock Exchange. We started initially actually down in southeast Turkey in a fairly exciting origin, what they call the Tigris Mountain Range down there, highly underexplored. That sort of operation came to an end when a peace process in Turkey was also brought to an end, terminated in 2015, and so we moved then across to Latin America, which was an old stomping ground of mine, and some of the other staff, of course, and worked in Colombia and Nicaragua. Made some discoveries in both of those countries, cashed out, I guess is probably the best way of describing our exit from Nicaragua. And we are currently sitting on assets in Colombia, entertaining some offers and deals, but meanwhile made a fairly significant change to the company strategy and hopped across to two very exciting jurisdictions, so Saudi Arabia and Morocco. And in both of those environments, our principal focus is copper with gold, and we think copper with gold are some of the best mining assets in the world.
So there's not many Toronto venture-listed companies operating in the Middle East and North Africa. Can you tell us a bit more about what it's like as a jurisdiction to mine in?
As a jurisdiction to mine in, well, there aren't that many mines in the MENA region, so I'd be advised not really to enter into discussion on that aspect. It seems to me, at least, that those who are operating are doing so freely and without bother. In terms of an exploration environment, they're two of the best that I've ever worked in. So, and I mean that from all aspects. So, from the regulatory aspect to the prospectivity aspect, the social and environmental aspect, everything that we have to consider in terms of an exploration environment nowadays. In terms of government support, I would have to say that certainly in my experience, I think I could probably be even more general in this statement now that Saudi Arabia is somewhat unique. So to quantify that, and working your way up from the initial stages of entering that country, there's a completely transparent National Geological Database online that anybody can access and interrogate. There is a streamlined, although streamlining is probably the best way to put it, permitting process, licensing process that they're still working on. You can claim back qualified exploration costs on your exploration titles up to $2 million per title. So drilling costs, the cost of employing nationals, training national geologists, etc. Then they will lend you up to $800 million of your initial capex, and then there's a whole bunch of kind of taxation and royalty holidays when you get into production, depending on where your product goes. So that's quite unique. And Morocco in itself has embarked on a mission to treble its mining revenues to 1.6 billion, I think is the number, by the end of 2025. So both environments actively promoting and engaged in the mining sector, which is kind of unique.
Yeah, certainly sounds like a unique situation, especially with regards to operating in Saudi Arabia. I know that you entered Saudi with a joint venture partner in MSB, a local group. Can you tell us, what are the benefits of that approach?
Oh, the benefits are, I suppose, again, tangible benefits are We managed to get our sort of Royal Road Minerals, our investment license, a lot quicker by establishing an incorporated joint venture, so registering a company in Jeddah, which is 50% owned by us and 50% owned by MSB. We get the indirect benefit of understanding culturally how the country operates, the direct benefit of infrastructure support from MSB. MSB is a holding company, but it's the holding company behind one of, I think actually Saudi Arabia's largest construction firm. It's involved in other industries, and so there's a lot of G&A support, I guess is the best way of putting it.
And so when it comes to your exploration strategy, both in Morocco and in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, what sets you apart from the competition? What do you do differently?
Well, we explore. There's not a lot of competition. So yet, I am aware that the Saudis particularly have been on a very effective marketing campaign. So I do expect that we'll have neighbours in the not too distant future. But what we do, I suppose, is we in Saudi. Let's talk about Saudi particularly. So we adopt a traditional approach with an innovative edge to it. We have reconnaissance teams that are reviewing targets that have been generated through an in-house process that we've developed over 20 odd years of breaking down exploration terrain and identifying high quality targets that are actually worth going out to have a look at. And then when we go out, we have some purpose-built reconnaissance vehicles that are self-sustaining. These guys can stay in those for as long as they need to. And they travel in one of those at least with their own geophysical kit, so a high payload drone, big drone, airborne magnetometer, spectrometer, and a hyperspectral scanner. And of course, nowadays these are commonplace, but PXRF, so XRF guns, so we can get analyses, particularly of copper, there and then on site. And so we've taken a real campaign-style approach to it. There isn't a, and this is where it differs from Morocco. There isn't really an exploration or mining property market in Saudi Arabia. It's completely grassroots. It's conceptually immature in a way that we're applying models. Most of the initial sort of conceptual work was done in the late 70s, early 80s, and hasn't moved on much since then. So we've kind of got free range, very exciting and productive. We are identifying some fairly exciting targets that we're putting licenses over in Saudi. Morocco is a bit different. Morocco, there are a lot of properties there, interesting copper assets. The problem in that country are very small license areas, and operators in Morocco will be aware of that. Once you've found something, the next step is generally consolidating the district, which is never easy, and doing lots of deals. So that's that country's particular challenge. I think what we do different in Morocco is that we're working with a very active partner in MSB there as well. As a firm, I know that they work for the royal household in Morocco, and they're also building mosques and involved in various other projects in that country. So that helps us with introductions in terms of getting access to projects, and I think will help us when we get to that point of having to consolidate neighbouring titles and etc. So that's what sets us apart.
Yeah, interesting to hear the differences between those two countries, and it sounds like your operations in Saudi. You described a reconnaissance vehicle that sounds more akin to a Mars rover than a regular reconnaissance vehicle. But just wanted to take a step back, and when you're taking a look at the sector in general, it's been a very challenging period, and you were seeing a lot of investors with higher risk appetites, maybe putting their money into sectors like cryptocurrency or other more speculative assets in that exploration phase. What would be your message to attract and educate investors back into the junior mining sector?
Well, I think you know, and I'll lean on some work that the World Bank did just recently, but it certainly I can echo it, with my own experience. Take a look at exploration if you're a young investor. But when you do so, start with geopolitics. Look at where are these countries operating? Where are these companies operating? In which countries? Are they supportive environments? Are they responsible environments? So, you can have environments that are supportive, but at the same time, perhaps irresponsible in terms of looking after their own environment, and exercising their own social conscience. So take a look at companies that are. I'm going to talk the exploration book more than anything else because it's so necessary, especially now. At exploration companies, what do their teams look like? Are they purpose fit for the environments in which they're operating? What are they looking for? Do you want to invest in gold? That's a commodity / currency. It seems to fit both definitions. Are you wanting to play an investor's role in the energy transition? So are you interested in those energy transitions? So choose your commodity, your geopolitics, pick your commodity and do that. I would pick my commodity as out of if over the long term or the short term. So short terms, the gold market's a gamble, always has been, and today's gold price rises are a very good indicator of that because nobody seems to know why it's happening. Commodities, on the other hand, you can apply some productivity and maths to that. So if that's your particular angle, have a look at that. And then go to the teams. You can always tell the difference between what might be a more promoted junior company and one that's perhaps not as dedicated as others. To those that have got a long track record and are really professionally dedicated to the role of finding ore deposits. Let's face it, that's what we do. People talk about speculation, and that's fine. Speculation is not a bad word when you're speculating on the skills of an exploration group to go and find an ore deposit. It's less admirable if you're speculating on the skills of their marketing department to promote the enterprise. Is that a diplomatic way of putting delivering an answer to your question?
I think, it's certainly one where people can read between the lines and make the takeaways necessary to maybe start doing some due diligence and investing of their own. Just to wrap up, Tim, looking ahead through 2024, what's in store for Royal Road Minerals? Yeah,
I think that's an important question. So we've been pretty quiet. We were quiet over the last 12 months as we made this transition. It wasn't just a pivot. It was a major strategic and tactical transition that took a lot of, involved a lot of conversation with investors and shareholders and stakeholders before we did it. And so we've been quiet. And so now, we do need to perform and produce, and we're ready. We're on the brink of doing that, particularly in Morocco. I think the next 12 months, more than anything, will be dominated by drilling results out of the Alawana in terms of valuation or implications for valuation. Drilling results out of the Alawana copper gold polymetallic project in Morocco. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's never been drilled before. It was mined in the early days, so the turn of the last century, by French small-scale artisanal miners mining copper and gold. They mostly focused on some steep, high-grade structures, which they developed underground in a very primitive way. So it was very early-stage mining, so single drives just running down the vein, a lot of exploratory work on either side of it. But what they didn't develop much, and because of the geometry of the thing is a flat lying control that we're finding around the edge of a granite, very high grade copper and massive zinc sulfides and all sorts of fun stuff that's never been drilled. So that project is, it's nice to have. You can never really get these things down to binary decision points apart from do you drill it or not, and we've gone beyond that. We are going to drill it, but you can get them down to the point of where you've got some fairly concise and well considered concepts to test, and we're certainly at that stage with Alawana. We're hoping that the flat-lying style of mineralization extends for quite a distance below hanging wall, so below rock cover. It's exposed and it dips underneath it, if you like, so it's like the bottom page of a book. We have to drill through those top pages to see if it continues, and we think we can see it along strike. And we also believe that some of those higher grade, well, we know in fact that some of those higher grade structures that the French guys, the steeper ones, the French guys were mining, has copper and gold in the adjacent wall rocks. So that's looking pretty exciting. It's one of those projects I'm always, you can go to a project, and every time you go, you keep going and it gets better and better, or you start to get a more jaded view of it, and that's kind of a gut thing. And I've been going back to that project 5 or 6 times. I have gone back to that project 5 or 6 times, and it seems to look better every time I go back. So that's a really positive indication. So it'll be that. That'll be the focus. Securing some assets that we've discovered in Saudi Arabia. So we found them. We've submitted license applications, and we're waiting for that process to advance. And I think that will be fairly exciting, in terms of an announcement. We're also Morocco is a very busy environment. I really enjoy it. It's very high energy, so there are a lot of small-scale miners presenting us with investment opportunities in their projects, which is keeping me busy. Particularly, I'm trying not to disturb the reconnaissance teams in Saudi, going to and from Morocco, reviewing those assets. So a busy year, but I think the real valuation argument will be pinned on how Alawana turns out. Drilling June, July will be when that drilling starts.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that overview. Looking forward to seeing some of those results out of Morocco later on in the year, and seeing what else is in store for Royal Road.
Thanks, James. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Tim. Great to hear from you.